Hey guys, so another war video here. This is us against MIBR, made in Brazil. They've gone up against a few of our alliances that we're friendly with, and so we knew that this was going to be a pretty close one, most likely. As long as we played well, it was doable. So first up we have Mordo. I could have taken him with any of these three, but because he's not exactly easy to parry heavy, Mr. Fantastic probably would not have been smart. Magik works, but I don't want to use a power start on this boost, and if he ends up turtling and going red with multiple Furies stacked before I can get her to her power lock, it's just not worth it. Meanwhile, Claire. Now I could have stayed in blood mode to heal up that chip damage, or I could have gone into Hellfire to try and finish this sooner, but my reasoning here was that I was going to stay in Plague because this is a Strikeback node, and so every time I hit him with a special, he's going to gain a bar, and he really doesn't seem like he wants to throw specials. There's like, what, his second, third? I hadn't been counting. But, we went 2 of our L2s before he threw one, right? So I think on these kinds of fights where the L1 and the L2 do not matter, but you really don't want to eat an L3, that is exactly where Claire's power control really shines. She doesn't power lock, she can't really mess with ongoing power gain effects except by nullifying them or with buff immunity, but she has power steal on her L2. So even though it gives them power, it will not make them go red. So next up we have this Yellowjacket on Power Alternator. I'm reading through his abilities and mine real quick to make sure I'm not going crazy in thinking that this was a good matchup. But the core idea here is that since his buff, if Yellowjacket takes too much damage, has good RNG, and you throw too many specials, which Power Alternator encourages you to do, of course, then eventually he will go into meltdown mode with his reactor, and then every single contact with him will do a significant amount of direct damage. So that's obviously best avoided. So my theory here with Mr. Fantastic was that I was going to get my Careful Study passive up to improve my own power gain. I was not going to use any pre-fights, because by not using any, all of my special attacks were going to be unblockable. Now Yellowjacket has a line in his signature ability, in his kit, that says that when he is hit by an unblockable special attack, he spends 10 core charge to reduce the damage by 75%. Now that means that I'm not going to be killing him with my specials, but especially after his buff, Reed is going to have no problem just killing him with combos, right? Like most of this fight, I have either 3 or 4 debuffs on him, and thus I'm boosting my attack by several hundred. I'm also boosted from the lane. So every time I land a special on him, I'm keeping his core charge nice and low. We are at about the 90-second mark here, and he's down, almost 3/4. We're doing plenty of damage even with that reduction on our specials, and we're turning off the most dangerous part of Yellowjacket. Other than, of course, just getting hit by his specials. You saw I did mess up that one dodge there, and as high as Reed's evade chance is, it didn't save me, but I knew that this was only a 5-star Yellowjacket. I was not planning on using Reed again in the future, and so I figured, I would survive the power stings and it'd be fine. I was trying to build to another L1 there so that I could finish this fight with 5 debuffs up. Not gonna happen, but once I realized that, I just wanted to make sure that I knocked him out while he was stunned, because that allowed me to at least have 4 debuffs up, and thus to get 4 charges. So now let's talk about this next node for a minute. This is Jabari Panther on the Footloose Mini in Tier 2 that leads to paths 4, 5, and 6. This is definitely a good placement because the normal way that we control this fight is, sometimes we send Quake, who just avoids giving them power at all, and Jabari Panther will eventually cut through Quake. Sometimes we send slow champions to turn off the Footloose node, and Jabari will most likely just cleanse that. Sometimes we send power-controlled champions like Magik or Doom. Doom would also likely work here. We considered that, but we figured that shutting her down with Magik was going to work. I've done my duels. I know that she's fairly easy to backdraft with mediums, and I know that if I can get her in the corner and shut her down, I'm using 200% power back boosts, I'm using 12% special boosts. I know that I should be able, as long as I back her up and power lock her, to destroy her. I've done enough testing that I know that I can probably get to my L2 before she gets to her L1, using the advanced power start boost, of course, as long as I land my first parry and turn off her cleanse. Then I'm going to be able to parry freely for a little while, and I should be able to use that to get to my special. So all I have to do is land that first parry, right? And I didn't land it. So at this point, I know that I'm potentially in trouble because that can happen. And now she's backed me up, she's unstoppable. I should have hit her there because me gaining power was more important than her gaining power. I know she's in hunt now, so I'm trying not to parry because every time she purifies a debuff, I know that she is just going to pause the hunt and my nightmare is just going to get longer. However, I am running 5 out of 5 Mystic Dispersion. I know that as long as I do enough damage, I can chain these specials. I didn't get as much power back there as I thought I would. I'm not running Warlock. I'm not running Morningstar for those bonuses to my special damage. At this point, I'm realizing I should have run half suicides like I did the last time I used Magik. I figured this was only a rank 2. It wasn't Nick. It's not like there was a second life. I figured I'd be doing enough damage to get enough power back. But I'm realizing here I was wrong. And she is getting up there again. I was not planning on eating that heavy. I should have stepped back right there against the wall, used a light, and then done a full combo, and then thrown my L2, because at least she wouldn't have gone red, right? I had done a pretty good job of salvaging it until that happened. It just wasn't enough. I needed to land that first parry. I did not, and I got backed up, which is not only what I was not planning on and what I was afraid of, I also had not practiced evading her heavy in the corner. And that is something that I usually counsel people. It's along the same lines of, if you are taking a large champion, practice your intercepts. Practice so that you are ready if something goes wrong, right? And I didn't do that. So now on this second try, we're seeing what should have happened. As long as I can just, hold on to my block and keep her coming at me instead of throwing specials. That special ended it, but more importantly, she was back against the far wall and power locked, and even if she had still had 70% of her health, it would have been a pretty simple fight from there. That second take is the way the first one should have gone. So obviously that wasn't ideal, but I think I did learn quite a bit about how to take it next time, either with me or somebody else. But I do still think Magik is one of the best possible counters there. We probably will try Doom at some point, just because it's usually pretty easy to send a Doom up the center. But I think the important part is next time suicides, because there were a few of those L2s where I did not get nearly enough power back. If I had been running half suicides, then even backed up against the wall, even without crits, even without Warlock and Morningstar, I'm fairly confident that I would have been able to salvage that with the level of preparation that I did have. But I didn't run them. That was my mistake. I didn't get enough power back. Lesson, unfortunately and painfully learned. But on to the next one. We have Domino on Rage. Claire is definitely going to trigger Rage. She has pretty solid crit damage ratings, and she does crit. However, her buff immunity turns off all buffs, including the Furies procced by Rage. She's not the best Domino counter in the world. She doesn't really have anything to deal with, Domino's stuff. She's not a tech champion, so she can get unlucky, which is why I blocked that L1. My timing wasn't quite right to parry it, but way better than trying to dex it and getting hit in the face, right? But one thing that Claire does have that is good for Rage beyond her buff immunity is her Hellfire mode, which allows her to do a whole mess of damage that gets around the damage cap from Rage, and it also is just broken into a bunch of little hits, so most of those, will get in under that Rage cap, and you're doing a bunch of damage that isn't getting limited until you get to the final hit anyway. But Domino is not a large or extra large champion, so we don't have to worry about Protect, we just have to worry about Rage. As long as she is lucky, I am shortening my combos because I know that I can react fast enough to block if she evades in the middle of my combo, but if I finish one, I'm going to get smacked, and in this case, I would probably die. I know that I'm taking damage from that crit failure and from this block damage, but it doesn't matter. This fight is going exactly according to plan, and with 2/3 health left against a very dangerous defender on an annoying node, that went the way it was supposed to. So now Punisher 2099 on Aggression, Prowess, and Power Focus 2. This can definitely get away with you because he can stack those Prowess, and it's just a ton of special block damage, right? That's why I'm healing up Magik. My power start boost is gone at this point, but I know that if I put Suppression on, I can reduce how many L1s he gets. He's still going to get more than he would on a normal node because of Power Focus. I'm only turning that 60% down by 25%, but I know that I can eat the block damage from a few of those. I figure it'll probably be 2 or 3, likely 3. And then I will have my own L2, and he should not get another special. I will just take parry block damage at that point. I still have the power back boosts up. I know that I should have Limbo up for a huge chunk of this fight, and therefore I'm actually healing from the damage I take by parrying his attacks. No point trying to get fancy in the corner. I simply do not need it. It's a great way to get hit. And like I said, every time I get Limbo up and I'm blocking his attacks, even for a parry, I'm actually gaining health on net. There are going to be some parries that, aren't in Limbo where that's not true, but it's still much safer for this particular node, which I know is my last Magik fight, to just back up and play this the safest, simplest way possible. And there he goes. Just over a minute. So skipping ahead to my minis, I wasn't too worried at this point. Between my death and some other things, this was a very close war, so I was feeling the pressure from that. We actually did end up losing. Shortly after this, we died another time, and we figured they probably wouldn't. So they did very well. Congrats to Made in Brazil. We'll see you guys next time. But as I was saying, I was feeling the pressure from it being a close war, but I wasn't really worried about these two fights. King Groot can go unblockable because he has that long active regeneration buff, but I knew that if I baited out his first heavy, Claire has 3 nullifies right at the start, so I just needed to make sure I did, a full combo to get 3 hits landed against him to nullify his starting 2 Furies and the regen buff, and then he wouldn't be unblockable anymore. I'm staying in blood mode to get my healing and to get extra charges by ending in mediums and inflicting bleeds that he is immune to. And right now I'm just trying to keep that buff immunity up so that he doesn't go unblockable. Another thing that I know from past experience is that if he tries to trigger his Furies while buff immunity is up, it actually turns him off completely. He will never get Furies or a regen back. So that's why at this point I switch over to Hellfire. I'm no longer worried about nullifying because there's going to be nothing to nullify, and now I just want damage. Now I just want the fight to be over as quickly as possible so that I don't have any more time to make mistakes. Doing good damage through block, because remember, one of the effects of Incinerate is to remove the, is to reduce the defender's block proficiency, so that's nice. You can help mitigate willpower healing that way. The main reason I'm ending with mediums is just because they grant more power than lights. I'm not really trying to inflict the incinerates, I just don't want to use light enders because I'm going to get less power. So at this point I was contemplating whether I should maybe go for one more Blood L2 to heal up to full. I figured, you know, maybe I'll get 2 in. Maybe I can switch over then. Nope, not quite. I was actually... Once I threw it, I was surprised it didn't kill him, honestly. But that's okay. We'll just move through this. I'm not even going to bother with an L1. It might crit, and just combos are going to be enough. As I've said before, that's kind of a gimme node. Wasn't really expecting too much from it. You guys have seen me take this next fight before. This Cosmic Ghost Rider isn't even duped, which actually makes it a little easier because I don't have to worry about that degen damage. If for some reason he gets that that 5th Judgment, right, it would just power lock me for a minute. So I used Debuff Siphoner and Petrification Ray there. I didn't need to use either, but my idea was that if I somehow messed up and he got a full combo in against me, ended with a light, and got his power gain buff, I wanted to blunt it. If I somehow messed up and he ended up hitting me with an L1, especially that first one that I know is going to be unblockable, then I want those Incinerates to do 25% less damage so that I'm not in trouble. But now that we're past the first L1, I'm not really worried about how this fight is going to go. Ending in mediums to inflict that poison because then we can freely stun him. I should have used heavies there. I was just kind of enjoying myself. But I had actually forgotten about the polka dot power aspect of this node for a minute. So I was like, oh, I'll just combo to those L2s, but I would have gotten more power if the first one I'd thrown had been a heavy and then I had comboed to the L2. Either way, he's below a third, I'm over 90. I know I'm just baiting out this special one. I'm going to land another poison here. I'm not at all worried. I think this node is definitely at its most dangerous when it takes advantage of Protect. They didn't do that here. I understand what they were going for with the Incinerate immunity, but there are a number of champions out there that inflict poison at this point. Oh well. Hopefully we get a replacement for Protect in the near future, and then we don't have to worry about any of that. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you learned something from my guinea pig experience there with Jabari, and I will see you guys next time. Take care.